All right, I'm back with Tom Ganter, managing editor of Capital Confidential. We're talking about teachers, teacher salaries, how do you evaluate what is a good teacher, what is not an effective teacher. And Tom, you just talked recently about you don't think that they're taking it seriously as far as how they evaluate their teachers because of the two categories they're stuck in from part one. So if you guys are
Right.
watching this
I'm
now,
sorry. The yeah.
go ahead.
The teachers are grouped in one of four categories:
Hmm.
highly effective, effective, minimally effective, and ineffective.
Okay.
98% of the teachers in Michigan are grouped in the top two categories: highly effective and effective.
Okay.
So, you know, in Michigan, the worst teacher in the building can make more than the best teacher in the building.
Which is not fair. I mean, there's a teacher in my school district. I mean, you walk into her classroom and I took pictures of it and sent it to people when the kids weren't in there because it was phenomenal. I mean, that is just and I think they just recently did an article on her too, but she's just a phenomenal teacher. And then there was one teacher that was notoriously bad in our school district. My son had her. In fact, she taught a cooking class and she made them have these big thick binders. Like 90% of your classwork was work, like paperwork for cooking.
Mm.
And and she basically, if you had your stuff out of order, she wouldn't give you any credit for the binder, and that thing was the majority of your grade. So my son had stuff out of order. I think he had one or two things missing, and so he got a zero or whatever on this. And so he had no way to pass cooking in middle school. So I went to he had at first hour. So I had asked them to pull him. They didn't at first. 6 weeks left in the trimester. I went to the principal and said, I'm just gonna let you know, my son will not be in first hour period. He's done going to that class. That teacher is horrible. You have a line out the door of parents complaining about her. I said, and he's failing. He has no way to get caught up because of this stupid all or nothing binder. I'm like, I'm not going to subject him to have to go to school and sit there knowing he's in a class he can't pass. I'm like, so he'll be there. So either you pull him out and put him somewhere else. This was in middle school where it's a little bit easier to do. I said, you either pull him out and put him somewhere else or he won't be coming. And they did. They put him in like a study hour or something the last 6 weeks. And she ended up retiring. I think that they did. I think the principal did address her and get her out. But, I've seen two ends of the spectrum. My issue with evaluation criteria is, again, if you're going by standardized testing, some students just don't test well. They're really smart kids. They don't test well. B, the teacher can do all the things right, but if you have students, especially if you're in a population area where there's not much parental involvement. So one of my friends is a teacher in a very urban district, and her family comes over to my house for Christmas, and she told me she didn't have one parent show up for conferences. This is high school, so you have 120, 150 kids. Not one parent showed up to her for conferences. So how do you evaluate a teacher when it's a kind of a group effort? You have to have the support of the parents. The kids have to be willing to do the work. So if the kids fail, is that always the teacher's fault?
Well, there's a couple of things we can address. The first is using evaluations. The kids go to school to learn. So at some point, that's got to be what you base your evaluation on. Is our kids learning? There's many ways they can do that, and there's a certain percentage. Right now the big debate is how much of a percentage you base on student growth. So you can talk about that, but there's a bigger issue here, and that is you talked about a great teacher and a poor teacher, and I said that poor teacher could be making tens of thousands of dollars
And she
more.
probably was. She
Okay.
probably was because she was probably she
Right.
had been there for decades.
Right. But
So
that is the problem that I
mhm.
see. Because let's say this: would you and me agree that the best teachers, the superb teachers in the school district, should be the highest paid in the district?
Oh, of course. I don't
Okay.
know anybody that would say otherwise.
Well, that's not happening though.
Right.
Okay. Now,
Right.
there's a couple of things. There's been a law that was passed in 2010, I believe. Maybe it was 2012. I think it was 2010 about merit pay. Okay.
I remember that.
School districts have the ability to pay teachers extra, and through merit pay. Now, we've checked with all the school districts. I can't find one school district in the state of Michigan that takes merit pay seriously. Now,
Wow.
and if you're a highly effective teacher in Ann Arbor, excuse me,
Mhm.
Drink water.
Tom was gracious enough to come on my show today, even though he is getting over laryngitis. So
And I have a head cold. It turned into
and a head cold, right? So yeah, I still appreciate you coming on.
So Ann Arbor, if you look at Ann Arbor, it was $125. They gave a highly effective teacher. Now these teachers in Ann Arbor are making on average about $75,000 a year.
Did you say $125?
I said $125 for a highly effective teacher.
That's almost insulting, isn't it?
It's very insulting. Now, I will also tell you, we found school districts that gave highly effective teachers $1. And the reason they did it was because they were following the letter of the law. The law says you have to pay teachers merit pay. Okay? So if you give a teacher $1, you're following the law.
That's, oh my, and are the teachers...
And we also found, I'd like to say...
Is this something that the teachers know they're doing? Like, do they see an extra $1 in their check knowing that they got $1? Or is it just the administrations just kind of sneak it in that in so that if someone approaches them, then they're like, oh, yeah, we gave them merit pay, and the teachers aren't aware of it?
I don't know. The school districts that pay $1, we found out, aren't talking to us. So they're not going to talk about why they only give a teacher $1. So I don't know how they're getting.
So you don't know. So you don't know if the teachers are aware of that. Have you guys ever tried to write an article and target that area to see if the teachers will respond?
We've written over a dozen articles on merit pay. Okay. And what we found is that none of them really take it seriously. Because you have the ability to give teachers a high, what if that teacher that Lansing you're talking about at the end of the year got a $5,000 check and said, right, you're a highly effective teacher. We want you to stay. Here's $5,000. They could do that. They could give $10,000 to their most highly effective teachers.
Okay, so now that we're talking about the highly effective teachers, and yes, I mean, that is absolutely insulting. Now it makes me want to know what school districts are giving them $1 just to say they did.
We've done stories on it. You can Google it.
I will Google it, and I will make sure that I put them up on our page. I'll put the news stories up so people can see, because that's whack. But on the other end of the spectrum, so what does it take? Let's say you get a teacher in there and they're just abysmal, like the one teacher that I had. What recourse do they have? Obviously with the unions, it's not always easy to just can them. So what recourse do they have if they get a bad teacher in there?
Well, if you're talking salary wise, the recourse you can have is that if you get out of the system they have, you cannot give that teacher a raise. Okay. Mm-hmm. Just leave that teacher whatever salary they're at for the rest of their career. Mm-hmm. And that's how you get rid of the teachers that are horrible. All right. Now in Michigan, you can also, if the law states that if a teacher is rated minimally, mm-hmm. ineffective, mm-hmm. 3 years in a row, then they can fire them.
But it takes 3 years to do that.
3 years of being rated ineffective.
So you have 3 years of classes that have to be subjected to this person's crappy teaching before they can be like, oh, do you think that's fair? Or do you think
you also have to have an evaluator that's willing to give a teacher an ineffective rating.
And why would they not be willing to give that?
Well, statistically, statistically 0% of teachers in Michigan are rated as ineffective. Okay, so there's
roughly about every single teacher in Michigan is at least somewhat there's no teachers that deserve to be canned in Michigan.
So there's 97,000 teachers in Michigan. So there's roughly, whatever number there are, and there are teachers rated ineffective, but whatever number it is, it rates as 0%. Yeah.
It's so minuscule because of it. Yeah. Jeez, oh Pete. So, there's got to be, so 3 years it takes them to get rid of them. And you said that they're not willing to give the ineffective. Why would they not be willing, do you think, to give that ineffective?
Well, it's tough to give a teacher an ineffective rating, but I don't really think the problem with teacher salaries is that there are bad teachers, that are ineffective. The problem is that the best teachers, the most highly effective ones, are not paid any different than the mediocre teachers.
Sure. Now, there's no incentive for them to, it seems like there's no incentive for them to be like, it's almost socialist, like, hey, I'm busting my butt over here. I'm working all these extra hours. I'm putting in all this extra effort. This person over here is making the same as me. Why should I bother? I know that most teachers that are good teachers don't feel that way because they love their students and they don't want to put that on them. But still, what would stop them from doing that?
Well, I'm not sure, because when I look at the whole process of paying teachers more, the better teachers, there's a movement within the public school administration to say no, we don't want to do that. Okay, the reason they don't want to do merit pay is because the former Oakland County school superintendent did a blog where she said giving teachers more money doesn't improve. The studies have shown it doesn't improve teacher performance. Okay, so my thing is that I think money is the best way to show a teacher you appreciate them.
Right.
That's
right. I mean, and if you're looking at nationally, 1 million teachers, again, I wasn't able to determine whether that is teacher retirement or people just leaving because of the pay and various other factors, but 1 million teachers left, and you're starting to see where they're saying that schools are seeing a drop in people even interested in becoming teachers. I mean, I would think that if they knew the pay was there, that it might be a better incentive. I mean, what other incentive would there be? I mean, I guess my point is, if you don't have any kind of incentive in that being pay, then eventually, let's face it, these younger generations, they're not old school. I mean, what's going to stop them from just being mediocre? What's going to stop our whole education system from crumbling because you have a bunch of people that feel like they're not valued. And so why give that effort? So what did she give a solution? Did she say if there's a different way to reward these teachers?
That superintendent's solution would have been just to pay all teachers more, which I guess that's the solution they want, is that, pay all teachers more. That's one of the theories out there. Personally, I think we need to make sure that the best and brightest teachers are paid the most. And that's not happening in this state.
I mean, what happened, it's just like if you have a business and you have your employees that shine and they go above and beyond to, make things better and to serve your company. And then you just give them the same pay. I mean, that's a problem. Where do you think that stems from? I mean, or what do you think the consequence be? The unions? Okay.
The teacher unions are the one that negotiate the contracts, and they're the ones that have negotiated the same contract for every school district in the state of Michigan. And they're the ones that have come up with this system that once you make 15 or 18 years, you're done getting a regular increase, a raise, and that creates stagnant pay at the top of the scale. We've done stories where teachers of the year they become teacher of the year, but their union contract says you won't get a raise for the next 5 years because they've been at the school district 16 years. So that's part of the problem. Now, the problem is, in my opinion, the teacher's contract. But one of the things we're seeing right now is superintendents are getting flexibility. So let's say, we talked a little bit about the number of jobs that you talked about that are hard to do, special education, foreign language. Well, now when people apply to these jobs, some superintendent school districts are going to their boards and saying, I need to pay more for this job because it's more difficult to fill. And they're able to say, instead of starting this person in the first year salary, we're going to start this teacher on the 5th year salary, or in some instances, 7th year. That's the difference between a $35,000 starting salary or a $39,000 starting salary and a $56,000 salary. So you can make significant inroads into getting people to fill hard to place jobs by saying, we're not going to start you as a first-year teacher. We're going to start you as a 7th-year teacher.
This might be a little bit out of the scope, but do you think that any of this has to do with the nationalization of our education system? Because a lot of people don't know this, but I believe it's in the Constitution that it's education is state. That's something that's delineated to the state and local governments. And the national curriculum or the National Education Association or whoever's developing all of this Department of Education, they can't technically tell districts what to do, but they can hold the purse strings and say, if you don't do it, we're not going to give you this federal funding. Do you think that that's a problem just because, as you said, I mean, you have these discrepancies even in Michigan in different counties or different school districts, but when you're dealing with a broad spectrum over 50 states and, God knows how many school districts, Do you think that that one size fits all approach also hinders that?
Excuse me.
Hmm?
No, I think the problem is unions when it comes to teacher salaries.
Hmm.
And I think school boards could negotiate with unions and tell them we're going to have a different way of paying teachers. Okay. We're going to figure out who our best teachers are and we're going to pay them the highest amount we can. And we're going to figure out the ones that aren't and we're going to try and get them to be better. And we're going to
Hmm.
use money as the motivating tool to make them a better teacher. Okay. So
Okay.
that you have, we did a story once where there was a Michigan Teacher of the Year that was in Oakland County making 45,000 a year, and we did stories that
Oh,
there were gym teachers that in that district that made 45 and 52,000 more a year than this Teacher of the Year, and he was a
wow.
science teacher. So the problem here is that the school districts, it's like a baseball team. If you paid your Miguel Cabrera the same as your you know
Right.
as is the same amount of money as your Austin Romine. Um,
Good
you know,
analogy.
well, it's the same thing. Could you imagine? Or take a baseball team where Miguel Cabrera was the 24th lowest paid uh,
Yeah.
Tiger because all the other guys had been on the team
Been
longer.
on there longer. Right.
Yeah,
Right.
so
It
it's
makes no
it's like
sense.
that's the way teachers are paid in Michigan,
Do you
and that doesn't
think
make any sense.
do you think that this will ever change? I mean, like I said, we're
It
obviously
can change.
seeing. Do you
You know,
think that they will be forced to? I mean, because again, they're now starting to talk that we're going to have teacher shortages because people are seeing the writing on the wall with this. And, not only are they dealing, not only is the pay average, which is fine, but for, what they know they're getting themselves into now with all the requirements. You take what teaching was like even in the 80s compared to now. And I mean, I've seen teachers, I'm not there, but I've seen teachers compare that have been there since the 80s and now and they're like it's like night and day, and what they're required to do and what they have to handle and all that. So do you think that there will be a point where they will be forced to do something different because they cannot recruit people into these positions?
well, that now you're getting into is whether it's a teacher shortage. Um, we've looked at excuse me, we've looked at dozens and dozens of districts.
Mm-hmm.
What we're seeing is that there is very few people applying for the hardest jobs,
Mm-hmm.
such as special education, foreign languages, some of the highly advanced math and science classes. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
special education especially. Not a lot of people want to go into special ed. Okay, but we're seeing that in general education, there's school districts. One school district has had over 2,000 people apply for one position. Okay, we see generally,
Wow.
yeah, we've seen hundreds of applications in Grand Rapids, the bigger school districts, Walled Lake Central. We've looked at
Mm-hmm.
all the number of applicants they get for teachers. They get several hundred applicants for one teaching position because,
Okay.
because the pay is not bad, the
Mm-hmm.
benefits are good, and the
Mm-hmm.
pension system is not bad either. It's a quality, complete benefits package
True.
that has value. But one of the things that I think that the problem's going to be, and that we addressed a little bit earlier, is that um, you know we have a system right now that doesn't reward the best teachers, and in
Right.
fact penalizes them. We've
Sure.
found instances where ineffective teachers have gotten raises, and where highly effective teachers have not in the same school year. Okay, until you fix that system where the worst teachers are getting raises and the best teachers are not, there's work to be done on what teachers get paid. So, by the way, how we did that, we put a Freedom of Information Act in for every teacher in the school district, and we put a Freedom of Information Act in for all their evaluation ratings, so we could see which ones were things, and then we put a thing in for their salary, so we could
Okay.
see their name, their
Yeah.
evaluation, and what they were paid, and we could
Okay.
see that the ineffective teachers were getting raises while the highly effective ones were not.
Do you
That's
think
not
that
a
the
system you can support.
Do you think that the highly effective teachers, do you think that, I mean, I know teachers are so overwhelmed right now with just their day-to-day stuff. Do you think that they're aware of all of this? I mean, I'm sure there are some, but on a larger scale, do you think that they're all aware that, hey, the more effective teachers are getting the same pay as the ineffective ones, or not very
I
effective?
don't know. I can tell you, Jamie, that very few contact me. We try to reach out to teachers all the time, and they don't want to really discuss their salaries. I think they're under a lot of pressure from the union not to discuss their salaries.
Mm.
The Michigan Education Association, the American Federation of Teachers Michigan, don't want their teachers talking about salaries. I think the biggest disservice right now is that these unions promote storylines from teachers that is just inaccurate. You went to Lansing. Excuse me. We did excuse me. We did a short story about a Lansing teacher who said, I feel guilty when I go out and buy a $7 bottle of nail polish. Now that teacher made $60,000. And she was only been there 7 years. So my thing is, that doesn't do anything to help better, because if you're making $60,000 a year, you can afford a $7 bottle of nail polish. Okay?
Right.
But the thing is, it's like, that's the union's response to this. The unions have said there's teachers on food stamps. I'm sorry. There's very, very few, perhaps less than a handful of teachers on food stamps, because you'd have to be making $35,000, actually 39 is more or less what the starting salary is. And you'd have to have like 6 or 7 dependents, with no other income other than your salary to be on food stamps. So
do you think that the unions are creating a narrative they're creating the narrative like, hey, look over here, don't look over here type of thing?
I think they're creating a false narrative about how terrible it is to be a teacher, and on how crummy the pay is. And it's a false narrative, and we point it out all the time. Most of our little fact checks we do are from the Michigan Education Association, because they're incapable of saying things that are accurate. Every time we point out, they have a teacher that, like the $7 nail polish.
Why would the unions though what would be the benefit to, if their teachers if they feel that they're underpaid, then wouldn't that almost make the unions look bad that they're not getting them more pay?
That's true, but it also it goes hand in hand with we're underfunded. We get if we get more money, we can pay our teachers more.
Well, that's a whole other conversation in and of itself. I think it'd be great sometime to talk about the funding, per pupil funding, back in probably maybe from the 50s to where we are now, and our educational outcomes linked with, because what is our per pupil funding, adjusted for inflation compared to like the 1950s, and what were the academic outcomes? Is it effective to keep throwing more money at per pupil funding? And another thing too, actually, that goes to this about school funding is, I don't know if you remember Representative Jack Hogendijk in Michigan. I want to say it was 2007-ish, maybe 2005, 2007. He introduced a bill to ensure that, I want to say it was like 62 cents of every dollar actually went to the classroom. That means teacher pay and benefits. That means, actual class, desks, the building, all the stuff that's not administrative. So if he was introducing a bill which, by the way, did not go anywhere, it did not get signed into law. If he's introducing it to say 62, I think it was 62 cents. I'll have to look it up. It was no more than 62 cents. That means right now that less than that is getting into the classroom. So now you're sitting here talking about wanting to raise, more school funds when a lot of it isn't even getting into the classroom.
When you say getting into the classroom, that means a lot of different things, and you're going to have a lot of different opinions on it. I'll bring up one thing. Teacher pension costs. Is that a classroom expense?
Yeah, that I don't know.
Well, you think you say pay and benefits.
Pay and benefits. You would assume
what about the pension teacher?
Right. I don't know. I'm not sure about the pension. I know that they were including salary and benefits. I don't know about the pension.
You specifically. Do you think pension benefits costs should be part of the classroom expense?
It would make sense if salary and benefits go in as part of the total compensation.
If you include that cost.
I would say it would make sense too. Yeah, I would.
It's $1 billion cost that you're going to throw into the classroom. what we've seen is what I call the blob, which is the unions, administration, the cottage industries, all surrounding public schools, like the Michigan Association of Public School or Michigan Association of Superintendents, those kind of organizations that collect fees from the school districts.
Mm-hmm.
They all say that pension costs are not part of the, in the classroom expense. So if you want to take out that $1 billion expense, then you're going to create a lot more of a need for revenue to go into schools. If you're going to use going into the classroom. So I mean that's part of the discussion is what do you want to do with pension costs? Because you're paying a teacher that works 30 years, retires at 52, or excuse me, retires at 55, works 33, is only going to get about a $34,000 a year pension. That pension could go up 3% every year, okay, and they could carry that pension for the next 35 years.
Mm-hmm.
There's a cost to that.
Yeah,
and
sure.
The cost is very, I want to say right now, the Michigan Public Schools Employee Retirement System pension has a unfunded liability. I think it's about $36 billion right now. Okay?
Whoa.
Okay.
And
now,
what are they going to do? What do they have?
Well, now they're doubling down on it and trying to pay it off. They have a plan to pay it off within 20 years.
Good.
But if you look at what school districts were paying, are paying in some instances 3 and 4 and 5 times the amount to cover these pension costs than they were paying 8 years ago. Okay.
Wow.
So the problem here is that you're looking at these pension costs are completely devouring Michigan public school budgets. Okay.
So what's the answer to that? What do you think needs to happen?
Well, the answer to that is if you want to, a couple things. One, people have to realize that it's a heck of a benefit to give somebody an annual pension.
Oh, for sure.
$35,000 a year.
I'll never see that. Now, mind you, again, it goes back to the fact that I wouldn't want to be the person teaching kids for 30 years. And I appreciate that. But personally, my husband and I mean, we don't have a pension waiting there for us. And from the talks of it, it sounds like we're probably not going to have Social Security either. So,
so, that's a heck of a benefit, but it comes with costs. Okay. Mm-hmm. Also, they have retiree health care. Okay. That's going to also come with a cost. So, I mean, but these are things that don't show up in the W-2 salary, where it's just like, okay, yeah, this is what I make,
Right.
They're
true.
But you're not counting, like, a lot of the times we're starting to post, there's a gym teacher that was complaining in Utica about his salary. And, what we said is we printed that, look, this teacher is making, $89,000 a year at Utica. He's a gym teacher. But we also pointed out that the total cost of that teacher was close to $178,000 when you get in everything.
Sure.
The cost of the pension, for right now to make up and pay off that liability that we talked about for the pension plan, it's costing school districts right now for a typical teacher roughly about $40,000 to $52,000 a year.
Wow. Yeah, that is definitely something that that a lot of people don't think and don't take into consideration with that. But yes, but regardless of the pension though, yeah, that is, and that is a big, bulk of it for sure. But are you saying that the pensions right now are how are they accounting wise considering that? Are they putting it under their administration costs right now, or are they putting it in the per pupil funding?
What they're doing is a lot of the money under Snyder, for 8 years under Snyder, what happened was he gave the public schools millions of dollars, okay, that they took and gave it right back to them, right back to the state of Michigan to pay off the pension costs. And that was part of their school funding. So a lot of the superintendents complained. It's like, well, we don't really see that money because it just passes right through us. But, our point of view is that, well, it is your money because it's paying the expenses of your employees.
Right.
And that was one of the things where there's kind of a disagreement between me and a lot of the superintendents. It's like, yeah, you're not seeing the money. They don't get to, it's not like we can use this money for maybe something else because we need to shore this up. No, it has to go right back to the state of Michigan to pay off their pension costs.
Right.
But those are pension costs that, and let's be clear. We've done a lot of stories on this. This is the state of Michigan and the Office of Retirement Services that we've done stories over 40 years neglected to put enough money aside to pay for these expenses. Okay.
So they mismanaged their money.
For decades, they underfunded this pension system. It's not the school district's fault. It's the state of Michigan's Office of Retirement Services. Okay. And this has been going on for decades. This, this $36 billion. I wish I had the figure right.
So the pensions don't necessarily fall under the school districts. The pensions are the responsibility of the state government.
Correct.
Okay. I did not know that. No. So that's an interesting thing. So that really wouldn't then probably fall on. I don't know how you could categorize that necessarily then, if that's a state issue. If the state messed up on that, I mean, you can't really. I would say that shouldn't be included in the school district funding. I mean, I would think, but again,
it is.
It is, but it is.
Yes, it is.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, what do you think? Do you think it should be or no? I mean, if the states are the ones that mismanagement, why is that being piggybacked on the local school districts?
Because it's the local school district employees who are benefiting from it. Okay, they're not paying the pensions for the state of Michigan employees. They're paying the pensions for the employees that work at that local school district and the people who've retired from that local school district. So hence, it's the local. It's like, if it's not the responsibility of the local school district to manage its pension fund. That's the state's responsibility. But the benefit of that is certainly the local school district. Okay.
Sure.
There's superintendents that retired 15 years ago that are collecting an annual pension that worked at that local school district that that local school district's employees are paying for. So that's the benefit. It's like, to me, this is all part of the compensation package that we talk about,
Sure.
And it's part of the cost. This, people only talk about salaries, but they don't look at the healthcare costs. They don't look at the retirement costs. And that's what makes, like I said, the Utica gym teacher, I think his total compensation was roughly about $172,000 a year.
When they hire on, would they not be smart? And maybe they do this, but like, if I'm a local school district and I'm looking to recruit teachers, I mean, wouldn't you want to lay that out any good business would sit down and say, okay, here's your overall benefits package. Here's your salary. Here's your benefits. Here's your pension. This is what it's going to benefit to you if you stay here in the long run, and you get this pension over the next 30 years. Like, this is your total benefits. But do they do that? I'm assuming that they don't.
I think they do, but I think things happen over time. Like in any job, I think who are right now the teachers that are the most unhappy that we see quoted in media are the teachers with the most experience. And I believe the reason for that is, like I talked earlier, is like those teachers could have stagnant pay for the last 6-7 years, okay, where they're making basically the same amount of money. What employee is going to be happy at any salary,
right,
with a stagnant salary for 7 years,
right?
Because your expenses are going up over that 7
exactly
years, but your pay is not. And that teacher could be making $94,000, $95,000, $96,000. But $96,000 6 years ago is not the same as $96,000 today. But $96,000 is still a good salary for a teacher.
Sure.
But you can see how that teacher is not as disgruntled because of the system that they're trapped in.
Right. Well, and not to mention a lot of times too, when they renegotiate the teachers' benefits and everything, they're starting to a lot of times take on more, they're going to have to pay more into the system. I mean, I think even our local school district had that they had to start paying more for their benefits. So now if you're capped out and then you're paying more for your benefits, then that's just eating away more at your salary too. So it sounds to me like they need to start getting some people in there, maybe even that's more business minded, that can come up with some good solutions. And it sounds to me like they need to start thinking out of the box at least. And it probably doesn't even really take out of the box. It's probably just that they've done this for so long. Well, this is the way we've always done it. And obviously you have so many different, you have the unions, you have all these different facets of this big beast, I guess you could say. So It sounds to me like they're going to have a problem though if they don't start addressing that because let's face it, we see with these younger generations, they already, it seems like a lot of them do tend to seem to have a little bit more of a, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say entitlement attitude, but I mean, we are starting to see the socialist mindset starting to
Let me ask you, did
permeate
you have a
stuff.
socialist mindset in your 20s?
No, I didn't. I was actually, no, heck no. My parents would have beat that out of me so fast. Are you kidding me?
Well, I had a socialist mindset in the 20s.
The biggest man,
My
you should
20s.
have went and worked I'll tell you what, I had a big college motivator. It's working for Dave in the bakery, my dad. Anybody who worked for Dave in the bakery went straight to college because they're not doing that for the rest of their lives. No, I was always really good with my money. I always believed in earning what I got because I just came from an old school family like that. So heck no, man, my family, they slant. They're the hardest working people. You better earn it mentality you'd ever meet. So I would have been eaten alive had I had that. I'd have lasted 2 seconds. But yeah, let's talk some other. I'm gonna let you go, and I really appreciate you coming on, especially since you've been over here
And
about
so
dying
no,
with
I
your
did have
laryngitis.
I had laryngitis. Now it's a head cold.
Well, you're still having the after effects of it. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think we need to talk about maybe like the administration at some point, like these school district administration, school board type of stuff, because I definitely am seeing some concerns there as well, as I'm sure you are. So,
All right.
all right. Well, thanks, Tom. Go get some rest, man. I'll allow you to go back to your life now.
All right. Thank you.
All right. We'll talk soon.
All right.
Bye.